I want to tell you a story. It begins with a chance encounter in wormhole space, and it ends with this. In between, there's intrigue, diplomacy, combat, and a lot of what you see right now, orbiting wormholes. You'll primarily see things through my ship's point of view, with a couple snippets from fleet comms used with permission. There's a lot more detail in the full after-action report on the Eve subreddit. I'll be referencing that report heavily for the parts of the story that took place before Noir's involvement. There's a link below, it's very well done, and definitely worth a read. My goal here is to summarize what happened, and why it's the sort of thing that makes me love our games community. Now, onto our story. As a war rages in high-value star systems in wormhole space, a pilot from the Vaporlock Corporation happened upon a wormhole containing something he found odd. The residents of this particular hole, J141425, seem to be fans of a certain European leader from the 1930s and 40s. I'm not using specific names to avoid angering the algorithm gods, but you understand what I'm getting at. These folks certainly appeared to be red armband enthusiasts. There are multiple screenshots corroborating this, which can be found in the after-action report. A handful of corps called this system home, including Horny Police Department, Haven Enjoyers, Interstellar Realms, and assorted others. Vaporlock, not being fans of red armband enthusiasts as a general rule, began gathering intel on the system. They figured they had a solid shot at liberating J141425, or as it would come to be known, Normandy. The assault began on May 9th. Vaporlock was able to infiltrate and set up a forward operating base. The primary targets to effect the eviction were an Astrahus and an Athenor, as well as some posses. While the initial bash went smoothly, there was a potential problem on the horizon. Due to a timing issue, instead of the reinforcement timers coming out in 2 days, the final bash would need to happen on Sunday, May 12th, Mother's Day in many Western countries. In addition to needing to find excuses to play internet spaceships instead of treating their significant others and mothers, it meant an extra day of hull control against an opponent primarily in the Russian time zone. Vaporlock was able to establish initial control and reinforce the residents' posses and structures, all while holding an overnight screening of a thematically appropriate Tarantino movie. References to that movie would be ubiquitous on comms through the whole weekend. By Saturday morning Eve time, the residents showed signs of resistance, along with some allies that they'd bat-phoned to assist. The few exhausted pilots maintaining the siege were forced back. Hostile numbers climbed rapidly, with estimates of 70 plus on the side of the armband enthusiasts. Outnumbered, Vaporlock called for their own backup. The defenders' numbers meant whole control was lost. The only hope for the assault was to re-establish command of the battlefield. Then, something happened that would shift the tide. Vaporlock's fleet commander accepted a convo from someone he thought was friendly backup headed to join the assault. It was not. In fact, the convo request was from a representative of the corps that had come to defend against the assault. This diplomat wanted to know why Vaporlock was there conducting an eviction. Armed with days of screenshots of swastikas ranging from ship and structure names to anchored structure sculptures, the Vaporlock fleet commander shared the corps' reason for being there. Word spread quickly through the defenders' allies, and the evidence of the type of group they were helping disgusted them. Before long, the bat phones began to exit. The after-action report commends the groups who left for giving up on a potentially good fight for the sake of their principles. I agree. So a special shout out to Hold My Probes, Tricky Situation, and the others who decided to leave the defenders to their fate. Maybe we can all meet at the flagpole and have that fight later. As this was happening, Vaporlock's backup, including many longtime friends, was rallying. Among those called on was Noir CEO Alexeyev Card, who enthusiastically pinged our members. It was short notice at a time when many of our pilots were not in a position to respond. A few of us were able to rally, though. That's how I found myself here, orbiting a wormhole in a scythe. The Allied forces came in the overnight hours of the Defenders' time zone. Hull control was re-established by a combination of North American and European pilots. By this time, Noir had a presence in the system, as did Sugar, Only Holes, 745, and Lupus. As downtime approached and most of the North Americans were sleeping, the Defenders made another attempt. The Allies took losses in the first engagement, but regrouped. It was the wee hours of the morning in the U.S., but as Alec put it, how could we sleep with the drumbeat of fascism? The relatively few attackers still awake managed to degrade the entrances to the point that only a handful of EOS command ships made it in. They were quickly dealt with. As Sunday morning came and doubtless many North American pilots had to reschedule brunch with mothers and significant others, more allies arrived in force thanks to the efforts of Vaporlock to find entrances for them. The time ticked down, and a defense force was nowhere to be found. With the addition of fleets from Kitchen Sinkhole and Loose Coalition, the combined fleet numbered over 100. It's worth noting that a fair few of these organizations may have been perfectly happy to shoot at each other only 48 hours earlier, and may be happy to do so again now that the operation's over. On May 12, 2024, though, they stood united. Defense efforts were minimal. The Astrahus deployed fighters and tried to disrupt the Logi chain. I do want to give a shout out to my fellow Logi pilots for this op. There were at least 4 corps represented, and many of us had never worked together. I couldn't remember the last time I'd had to worry about a cap chain. Still, we figured it out, and no friendly ships were lost to the structure defenses. The Allied collection of Nighthawks and Drake Navy issues poured missiles by the thousand into the structures and played whack-a-fighter. As structure bashes go, it was far from exciting, but you wouldn't have known that if you were on comms with us. Nethiri, who was leading the combined fleet, took a moment to thank everyone for showing up. The mood was joyful. After all, a little tedium is worth it when you're dealing with this kind of scum.
So, wrapping that all up, I want to say very much thank you all for coming. I know that we all expected a bigger fight. We called bad phones because we expected a bigger fight. We did not expect them to fuck off that literally. And so it kind of is like right now a very one-sided thing. But I do believe we are making up for that in story time and in the fact that I think we're doing the right thing here. So
Yeah.
we're
Agreed.
currently having
100%.
118 people in fleet from basically every corner of the universe. I do believe that sets a statement, and I am so eternally grateful for you all to show up.
The defenders made attempts to evacuate assets with varying levels of success. Then, inevitably, the structures fell. Borrowed ships were returned, Vaporlock scouted routes out, took care of what came out of the structures, and everyone who came to help made their way back to wherever they were and whatever they were doing a day or two earlier. For the Noir pilots, that meant getting back to the war zone and preparing for a fresh insurgency. On the way home, I reflected on what had just happened. Over 100 human beings who share a passion for internet spaceships gathered from across New Eden and J-Space and across our real planet on very short notice. We all have our own motivations within the game and in real life, but every one of us decided that espousing some beliefs is simply unacceptable, even in our cutthroat spaceship universe. Speaking for myself, I salute you all, particularly Vaporlock, who took the initial steps and allowed us the catharsis of scrubbing a little bit of hate from our game. What you all did matters. And what about those defenders? Were they serious? Memeing? LARPing? Let me ask you this. Does it matter? In fact, someone on comms put it really well.
Through the transitive properties of fascism, if you allow a Nazi to your group, you're now a Nazi crew.
Transitive.
I mean,
Love it.
the thing is too is that like I'm half inclined to believe that it started as a LARP, but if you LARP something for months at a time, I don't think you can really call it role playing anymore. I think you're just being the real deal.
Noir is a mercenary corporation. If we're shooting someone, it's probably because we're getting paid. This one, though, was on the house. Until next time, good hunting, and fuck Nazis.